I also feel like people are going to be mad at me for this opinion, but I didn't enjoy Magnolia Parks. In June, I read 7 books completed and I started 10. I really appreciate how and why so many people think this is the best fantasy series or like romantasy series ever created. Would I ever pick up that series again? I don't think so. If I was 16 reading this, I would eat this up, absolutely. To me, this is like a Wattpad fic. It's like when Stephanie Meyer brought out Midnight Sun and we get to see Edward's point of view. Perfect. I want to know exactly what he's thinking at all times. Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today is a June wrap up. I'm so excited to get into this video. So let's dive straight in with my June reads. In June I read, I didn't actually count this before I started this video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I read 7 books and I started 3 more. So we're up to about 10 books in June, but 3 of them I haven't actually finished yet. If you can hear a scraping noise, my neighbours are doing their garden. I have to film today, can't be helped. But in June I read 7 books completed and I started 10. We are just going to dive into all of them. So you might have just seen my Throne of Glass review video if you're seeing this now. It is an incredible series. We'll kickstart there. In June, I think I read from Heir of Midnight to Kingdom of Ash. So that's Heir of Midnight, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, yeah, Kingdom of Ash, and that's it. I really loved this series. I think in my reading review and like my reading vlog, I was a little bit harsh as I was reading, but now that I have like a level of separation from actually finishing the series, I have a lot of love for this series and I have a lot of gratitude for the characters and the way Sarah did the whole plot. And like in the end, there are definitely some things about the ending that I'd like to change. There are some things about like characters' arcs that I would like to change personally if I was writing the story myself, but I really appreciate the way Sarah did it and I really appreciate how and why so many people think this is the best fantasy series or like romantasy series ever created. Fully understand that. I don't think I've read enough romantasy or fantasy in my reading career, shall we say, to put that title on this series just yet, but it was by far one of the best ones I've personally ever read, if not the best one I've ever read. Saying that, I think I would definitely recommend this series to anyone. I would definitely recommend this as a starter series to fantasy. Would I say that it is going to remain in my like top fantasies ever? I'm not sure. I have a feeling that there are going to be different genres, different styles in this genre that I'm going to prefer. But I don't think that needs to take away from this series right now. I really enjoyed it. I really loved most of the characters. I got very annoyed if you haven't watched the Throne of Glass spoiler video because you don't want to have spoilers. Basically, throughout reading like the whole series, I got pretty annoyed with some of the characters and I got really annoyed with how some of the characters' arcs were going. I felt like some of them in the series were a bit cyclical in the way that we thought they'd got through something and then they started all over again, and of course that's the human process. But sometimes in a book about like fantasy you don't really want necessarily that human element to come in just that much. So it's like one of those catch-22s where like it was done beautifully, however if I was going to write it myself I maybe would have had like different experiences for the character arcs and like different things for those characters in the way that the story was built as Sarah built it. I feel like I'm having to talk around myself because I don't want to give any spoilers and I don't want to mention any names, because obviously if you haven't read it and you are wanting to read it so you don't want spoilers, I don't want to mess up anything for you. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed Throne of Glass as a series. I really enjoyed most of the characters. There are actually books where a lot of people said they skipped them or they were really bored reading them, when I found that they were some of my favourite books. So I think that maybe has like something to do with me and my reading style and the kind of books and genres that I enjoy versus other people who have read this series and think some of those books are boring. So let's just say, hopefully this isn't a spoiler for you, but like Tower of Dawn was a very, I think, derisive book where people say they either just skipped it because they weren't interested in the characters and what was going on in the story, or they quite enjoyed it and like they were happy to read it. Sometimes I think people read it in tandem with another book, or they read it as I read it, which is you read Tower of Dawn first and then you read Kingdom of Ash. I really enjoyed Tower of Dawn. It was one of my more popular books for me in the series. It was one that I quite connected to and I really enjoyed reading. I really liked the characters. I really liked the way the plotline developed. It was just like such a singular book within the series where it was just so different. It was like some of the same people that we speak to and we know their characters. And it's just funnily, one of the characters that I didn't love was in that book and featured heavily, and it kind of changed my opinion on them a bit. Yeah, it was just one of those books where I was like, oh, this is part of this series and it's very much interconnected, but it's such like its own standalone story. Do not read it standalone, I don't mean it in that way. It's such a novel in itself that it was just like really enjoyable for me to read as like a book in itself, not as part of a series. Like it wasn't an addition to me that just needed to have a book to fill this gap of knowledge. It really felt like a more curated form of Sarah's writing. I don't know why it resonated with me so much. Like some part of it has just really clicked with me. So Tower of Dawn is actually really high up in my estimate for my June reads. But anyway, that is Throne of Glass. Those are my very broad reviews because I don't want to accidentally give a spoiler, and I feel like I will if I talk much more in depth about it. But yeah, I enjoyed the character arcs. I enjoyed the way Sarah wrote in this style. I think it's her best that I've read so far. I've only read 2 of her series. I am going to read other Sarah J Maas books because I really want to have like a comprehensive view of her writing style, and obviously some of her more recent books are going to be like an updated style of her writing, so I want to get like a full 360 view of what she's able to create. But this is my favourite version of her writing. Everyone talks about ACOTAR as if it is the Live and Die series. I could honestly give and take it. Yes, it was a great time whilst I was reading it. Would I ever pick up that series again? I don't think so. I don't think it will ever be a reread for me. I didn't even end up finishing the last 2 books in the series. I read books 1 to 3, didn't read anything else. So like, I don't know that I would even recommend. No, that's a lie. I would definitely recommend ACOTAR to people just starting in the genre. If there is an experienced reader that has spent years in their reading career, would I tell them to read it? Probably not. That's going to be divisive. That is going to be an opinion some people don't like, but that's just the way I think about ACOTAR as a series. Just wasn't the one for me. So I'm really excited to get to know Sarah's writing a bit more, to see if it was just a one-off kind of series, that her writing style just didn't fully resonate with me past reading it. Like, I love reading books where I can't stop thinking about them after. I can't rule them out as a reread. I always want to pick them up again. Like, those are books to me that are like 5-star reads. I think Throne of Glass for me was a 4.5, sometimes verging on 4, depending on the book we're talking about. If we're talking about Throne of Glass, the first book, that is a 1. Throne of Glass, first book for me, is a 1-star read. Everything else I think is verging on 4 to a 4.5 star. It is a rereadable series for me. I would definitely pick it up again, but I do think it's one of those series that once you've read it all the way through once, you maybe wouldn't get the same reading experience the second time, because it's such a twisty, turny, plot, eye-opening kind of series that once you know what's coming around the corner, you always know it, if you know what I mean. It's like reading a thriller or something. You know how it's going to end, so would you necessarily pick it up again? Maybe not. But that is my thoughts on Throne of Glass. That is my thoughts on that whole part of my June reading. Very much enjoyed, would definitely recommend. I'm definitely going to reread again, but yeah, those are my thoughts. Let's skip to the next series that I picked up throughout the end of May and the start of June, Magnolia Parks. Now, I also feel like people are going to be mad at me for this opinion, but I didn't enjoy Magnolia Parks. I'm sorry to say it, but I don't love Magnolia Parks. I don't love... Is her name Jessa Hates? No, her name's not Jessa Hates. Her name's Jessa something. No, Jessa Hastings. Jessa Hastings, her writing style to me in this series specifically is very 2016 Alex reading. If I was 16 reading this, I would eat this up, absolutely. To me, this is like a Wattpad fic. And maybe it was, like, maybe this is one of those like indie route publishing, whatever, where like people write it and then it gets picked up and then it's published traditionally, whatever. I don't actually know the origins of this story. I don't really know the origins of Jessa Hastings' writing. It's just not my favourite style. I still have to read Magnolia Parks 5, I think. Yeah. I haven't read Into the Dark. I've read up to The Long Way Home, and I haven't read Daisy Hates number 2 / Magnolia Parks number 4. That also confuses me because I know they're like side-by-side stories written together. Like, that confuses me, but you know what I mean if you've read this series. So Magnolia Parks 1, I nearly DNF'd. It was addictive in the way that it was like a car crash and you just couldn't stop watching. It was addictive in that sense. I was reading this as part of book club, so I'm having book club this week with 2 of my best friends. It's really funny because one of them really loves it and one of them despises it and nearly DNF'd too. And I'm sat in the middle of being like, it was addictively bad, hence why I've read the other 3 books. But it was also so bad that I wouldn't recommend reading it. But it's so crazy to me because I know so many people absolutely love Magnolia Parks and they like ride for Magnolia Parks. They've got so many like editions, they love the characters, like they cry, they have like so many people have tattoos from Magnolia Parks, which is absolutely insane to me. I would not get this series tattooed, but that is my personal opinion on Magnolia Parks. I just think so many things didn't resonate with me in the way that, like, I have no idea where Jess Hastings is from, but it felt like an American writing a London British experience. Like, I said experience really weird there, but it really felt like an American had an idea of what London and London living is like and then decided to write a book about it with like obscenely wealthy characters, which is also not what I was expecting from Magnolia Parks. Like, I don't know what I thought going into the series other than the fact in my head it was like teenagers / like young adults falling in love with each other, and a story basically similar to like One Day, where you span like a period of their life, like falling in and out of love with each other, dating other people, and essentially Magnolia Parks is quite like that, but just the dynamic and the relationship between these 2 characters and the surrounding friendship group was just so bizarre to me. It was so 2016 Wattpad. It was so like jarring in a way that I didn't expect it to be, and I think that's what really threw me off. Like, I think if I went into it with different expectations and I wasn't reading a high stakes fantasy at the same time, which I think was my other mistake, I probably would have enjoyed this series a lot more. I think 2 things that I just mentioned came into factor. It being where I'm reading Throne of Glass, which is a high stakes, very well written fantasy that was involving superpowers basically and craziness and very dramatic plot twists, and there's fighting involved and I'm gonna steal your dagger first kind of energy. That then going to reading Magnolia Parks, like tandem in the sense that I read multiple books at the same time, then going to read Magnolia Parks where we're like in the Chanel store and someone's whipping out a black Amex card and we're arguing over fucking caviar. That doesn't happen in the book, but you know what I mean. It just felt so otherworldly and so jarring that I really didn't like the characters and I really didn't like the storyline. And one of my worst pet peeves with reading, with writing styles, with book talk recommendations and things like that is the miscommunication trope. It is one of the tropes I hate the most, simply because it's just so frustrating to me. I'm such an open and honest communication kind of person. Direct talking, telling your feelings, asking for what you want, that when I read people in stories that are so bad at communication, that actively can miscommunicate just to like piss another person off, or actively miscommunicate just because they want to like play games and keep the other person guessing, it's so against my nature and it's so against my morals and my beliefs and like my values that it just winds me up. Like, it just frustrates me. So I can never really read miscommunication tropes and find them endearing in the way that some other people can, or like find them like, oh, you want them to like get to like, you want them to like have that yearning, you want them to have that like a bit of miscommunication, so that one apologizes and they play the game of like back and forth, back and forth. Some people really enjoy that as a story because it creates this kind of like yearning for them to finally work it out and to finally put the puzzle pieces together. That's just not me. That's just not my style. That is just not what I enjoy. So Magnolia Parks to me was a big flop. I probably rate Magnolia Parks, especially the first one, 2 stars. Simply like, it gets the 2nd star because I was addicted to watching the car crash. I'd say Magnolia Parks 3, Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, that was probably a 3 star for me because it was really starting to round out the story and we were getting a lot more than just miscommunication. Don't get me wrong, these 2 characters love miscommunication, but we were having a lot more story than we were that trope, if you know what I mean. So Magnolia Parks 3 gets a 3 star from me. Yeah, I'm happy with a 3 star for that. That's okay. I don't know that I'd read it again. I want to finish the series just so I can have a fully rounded review, but that is my thoughts so far on Magnolia Parks. I'm not even going to mention Daisy Hates. I read the first Daisy Hates book. I'm going to skip the second. It provides very little value to me to the series. It feels like we were just rereading the exact same story just from another person's eyes, which is essentially what it was, and that to me just feels like null and void. Especially when the second character that we're reading from feels null and void to the series. Like, if we were reading Magnolia Parks again from BJ's perspective exclusively, obviously you know that they do dual point of view, but if we were reading it from BJ's perspective exclusively with none of Magnolia's thoughts as a second book, that would have made sense. It's like when Stephanie Meyer brought out Midnight Sun and we get to see Edward's point of view. Perfect. I want to know exactly what he's thinking at all times. I love that for us. I don't mind reading the same story again from his perspective because we've already seen Bella's perspective. We want to see Edward's. His perspective is so different. He never sleeps. He has so many thoughts in a day. Da, 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 da. Seeing this story from Daisy Hate's perspective was just bleh. Like, it was just meh. I skipped so many pages within the story, especially when we were just repeating a scene that we'd already seen in Magnolia Parks 1. I was like, yawn, I'm bored, tired, like, skip. So I read that Daisy Hates book very quickly, simply because I skipped so many of the pages. Didn't really enjoy the story. I'm not going to read number 4. That's already a DNF in my eyes, and people are not going to like it, but that's the way it is. I'm skipping straight to Magnolia Parks 5 when I do pick it up in July, and that's going to be that. That is my Magnolia Parks review, and if you agree with me or you disagree with me, I'd love to know in the comments. Be nice, please. I say this with no criticism of the actual author. There are plenty of people that live and die. Like I said, they have tattoos of this series, so I fully understand that it's just a personal perspective of mine. Please respect it. You can have your opinion in the comments, but yeah, those are my thoughts on Magnolia Parks. So let me skip on to the books that I picked up in June but have not finished. So it is Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard, it is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, and there is another book. It'd be great if I was actually prepared for this series. Oh, it was a non-fiction book. It was Biohack Like a Woman by Aggie Lau. So we're going to just skip over that. The Biohack Like a Woman one is a great book if you want to get into health and fitness and looking at your diet and things that are great for you and things that aren't so great for you. That is a great book as a beginner getting into this, because Aggie breaks it down really great. If you want to know about biohacking, you're a woman, you want to know more about your cycle with biohacking and things like that, great book. Not going to talk much more on that because, yeah, not really the place for it. But that was the third book. Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. I absolutely love Vic. Like, she is amazing. If you have TikTok and you want to follow her, Victoria Aveyard is an amazing TikToker in the sense that she really like does in-depth dives into like how she's writing her books, the publishing process, all of this kind of stuff. So if you're very interested in that but you don't want to spend hours researching or like just want to know more in a very easy sense, Victoria Aveyard does great TikToks. But onto Realmbreaker, I have, oh, let me just stretch over here. I have got the book because I don't have the physical copy of any of the other books that I've been talking about. Realmbreaker is really cool. Like, it's really different in a sense that I haven't read a fantasy like this at all, if not very recently at all. I can't think of a series that I read like this. On the back we've got a squire, the survivor of a failed quest, an immortal, timeless and unfathomable, an assassin, skilled and heartless, an old sorceress holding secrets behind her teeth, and a pirate's daughter, the ward's last hope. The heroes are gone, but the fight to save the world has only just begun. That is all the insight I'm going to give you. We follow a bunch of different characters through the beginning of this quest and the beginning of potentially, the place is called the ward, the ward's unraveling, and yeah, we follow all of these characters in their story as they fight to save the world, and it's just really cool so far. I will say the first chapter for me took so long to break through my brain. Like, there is so much world building that happens within the first chapter that my brain was just kind of spun for a loop. Like, I kept finding I was reading the same page like 2 or 3 times just to actually get the language embedded in my brain. But other than that, I really am enjoying this. I don't want to put it down when I pick it up. It's one of those ones where it's quite chunky. How many pages is it? I don't want to give myself any spoilers for the ending, but it's 563 pages. So it is a hefty book. They're like page... I don't want to show you too much. Let me just show you the first page. I hope that's focused. But the writing is like fairly big, but like not crazy big, because I think it's a young adult style book. So it's a hefty read, but it's really gripping, and you want to know what's happening with all of the characters and all of the perspectives you get. Like, there's not one character that comes up that I'm like, oh, yawn, skip. Like, I don't want to hear what they're doing. I don't want to hear what they're like thinking or exploring. So I'm really enjoying this so far. I really liked all of the characters, and I always want to know what they're doing next. So if you are up for another high stakes fantasy and it's not Throne of Glass, pick up Victoria Aveyard's Realmbreaker. I also read Queen by Victoria Aveyard. That series is one of my favourite series I've ever read as well. She's one of my favourite authors. So if you're into high stakes fantasy and young adult fantasy, Victoria is the gal for you. She is currently writing another series, I think it's a series, and that's going to be a romantasy, and I'm very excited for that because it's going to be an adult romantasy. So I'm so excited to read that. But yeah, that is Realmbreaker so far. I haven't finished it, so I can't give an in-depth review, but I'm enjoying it very much. The next book is on my Kindle, so I can't show you that, but it is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I'm only like a few chapters in so far, so I really can't give much of a review, but I'm enjoying the writing style. It seems like a really light and airy and fluffy kind of book. I'm hoping it's not going to be super predictable, although with romances it usually is. So it's going to give what it's going to give, and that's going to give romance, I hope. So I hope, like, when we get introduced properly to the love interest, because I think the person we're introduced to now is potentially it, but not. I don't really know. Whoever it is that we get introduced to, I hope they're going to be a pretty cool character that we're going to like have a little bit of tension over and like want to see them get together. But that is Done and Dusted. I can't really say much more than that because I'm only a few chapters in. I just wanted to include it because it's included in my numbers for June. But that is what I read in June. I'm going to have another video for my to be read in July. There's going to be quite a few books on there, I think, because I'm going to try and do a 24-hour readathon. I'm going to try and do a what I read in a week, and I'm going to do a Instagram followers choose my reads for the month. So I've already had a few polls up for books that I'm going to read. I need to go check back in on them, so just to make sure that I've got the numbers correct. But it's looking good. It's looking like we have a good few reads coming up. Some of them being potentially Tempest of Tea. What are the other books? Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Once Upon a Broken Heart. And oh, the final Magnolia Parks. Yeah, that's it. Those are the ones that I've put up on my story so far. There might be some more. We'll see how time's doing. But those are the series that are going to be coming up on my channel. Those are the kind of videos that are going to be coming up. So if you're interested in what I'm reading, how I'm reading them, what my reviews are, then stick around, give me a like and a subscribe. Comment below your thoughts on my review of Throne of Glass and Magnolia Parks. Let me know what you're reading in July, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys!